Welcome in and welcome back to Minecraft. This week we're going to be taking things a little bit easier because I've had quite the hectic week and I'm looking for something that's a little bit more calm. To get started, I'd like to show you guys what I worked on off camera while I wasn't feeling super well. If you remember from last week, I talked about how I wanted to build up the bamboo and tree area of our base, and I did just that down here. I got kind of out of control with the building. I had to go find an amethyst. The scope of the project just kept getting bigger and bigger, but I'm pretty happy with the way that it came out. I've got this simple area down here for the bamboo to grow. I think I need to add maybe a light source behind this one because it doesn't want to seem to grow, but that's a quick fix. And then I have an area that I can grow trees in, and I can grow like the big spruce trees because it's tall enough. I made it quite tall for that, so it works out really good for that. And this is just kind of an area where I'm able to grab and get all of the wood that I might need. This was a good project to work on in my off time, I think. It's not an incredibly complex build. It's quite simple, but I think it came out really great, and I think it'll be relaxing to be in here doing my farming with such a nice little area, so I'm quite happy with that. The next thing that I worked on was the enchantments for some of my stuff. So I have worked on getting better enchantments for my armor. They're still not perfect, but they're doing much better than they were. We've got a lot more protection going on each one of my armor pieces, which I think is really good, as well as aqua affinity up here, which will be helpful for all of the terraforming I've been doing in the water. I also got efficiency 3 on my pickaxes, which will really help. And I think that might be it. I might have gotten maybe something on this, I'm not sure. But just a little bit more enchantment done, which I think is really good for in the long run. I've had to mend up my pickaxes a few times as I've been going along, and I've just been doing that with the anvil and with some of my diamonds. I did have to do a little bit of diamond mining as well because I was pretty much out, but it went well. And the final thing I'll talk about is where I got all of the amethyst from. So on the wiki, it says the amethyst spawns at about uh, Y30, and this is around Y30. I think it's like Y32 or something like that. I just kept digging until I heard a cave, and then way down there, I found a cave, and there happened to be an amethyst in there, which is really cool. So now I'll have access to an amethyst node and everything like that, everything that comes with it. So that'll be really awesome for the future. My original plan for today was to work on the Nether Portal Island, but given how hectic the week has been, I just don't think that I have the energy to go into the Nether to find the missing 2 biomes that I need so that I can get all this stuff from them. So instead, I think I'm going to be doing something a little bit more simple this week, and hopefully next week I'll be feeling better and we can maybe start that project. For this week, I'm thinking we're going to work on these little extra ruins that I have planned. This one is the pumpkin and melon farm, and then that one is going to be the cactus farm. So I'm thinking I want to get those set up and see how that's looking for this episode so that we have these ruins kind of tied in a little bit more. Right now, I feel like this ruin over here just seems to come out of nowhere and it doesn't really tie into our area very well. And so I want to remedy that with making more of these ruins. I think I've grabbed everything that I need to work. I've grabbed some supplies for both of the different farms, as well as the building blocks and little extra decorations and stuff like that. I've also got myself a little bit of a setup so I don't have to run all the way back over there to the starter base to sleep. So this farming area is, I think it's 7 across here and then I think 21 wide. And that came out really huge. So I want to definitely scale down for the future areas. I'm thinking Maybe if this is 7, maybe 4 or 5 for the pumpkin and melon one that's just over there, and maybe either 3 or 4 for this cactus farm here, because I'm not going to need a lot of cactus, and I'm probably not going to need a lot of pumpkin and melons either. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for those. I think I'll go ahead and I will grab some stone supplies and start laying out these circles. Here's what I'm thinking for the cactus farm. I think this is large enough for our needs. I'm only going to need a few cactuses so that I can get the cactus for green dye and then some of the cactus flower. I think that'll be plenty big enough. This is the size that I have decided on for the pumpkin and melon farm. I went with the 5 wide one. I think that'll be really good because I need to get both the pumpkin and the melons. So I need there to be enough space that there's quite a few of them, and that'll be good for this. The next thing that I need to do is I need to build up these walls so that they look more like ruins, because right now they're just platforms. And that one over there needs to be done as well. I haven't continued work on that one either just yet. So yeah, that one will need to have walls as well. And then after that, before I start planting everything, I think I need to figure out what I'm going to do for walkways. But let me get everything built up and then we'll work on those. So here's the height of the wall that I decided to go for this one. None of the texturing is done or any of the extra layering or anything. This is just the general height. The taller wall is going to be facing our base this time rather than out to the water. And the reason for that is because I'm thinking of making a rickety bridge from here over to maybe here somewhere, just kind of a slanted kind of rickety bridge that we can walk across to get over to that farm. And over on this side, this is what I've decided to do for the little cactus farm. This one kind of follows the same convention of this bigger ring where it's back towards the water. And this one will have another rickety bridge that's probably from here to here, something like that, maybe even a little bit more to here. I want it to have a little bit of sway in it instead of just being straight across because I feel like it'll have more interest. I think the next thing that I need to do is add some more texture to these because they look very flat without any kind of slabs or walls or anything like that. So let me get that done. I think the extra texturing and the lanterns really help sell this as a ruins. So this is what this side looks like, and this is what this side looks like. Before I start doing the pathways and adding the actual farms in, I started to realize that I think I'm missing something extra in this area, and I think it's more of these ruins that don't have farms in them. So I'm thinking of making some small kind of stone pillars nearby in the water that make it look like there was more to it than just these 3 towers. I've laid out a few plans for some areas. So I got a small one here, and then a couple over here, a larger one here, and then another really small one over here. I think those will add just a little bit more texture to the area so that it looks like there was more than just the towers. I'm going to go ahead and kind of build all those up and then show you them all at once. This time around, I wanted to show you guys the progress from over here. I've added quite a few of these smaller ruins, and I've done a bit of terraforming to make a lot of these fit in better. This is still not complete. I think I'm going to add some wood to some of these just so that they kind of blend in with when I make the bridges. I think that would be a really good idea. And over here, we've got some more structures and some more to look at from this angle as well. So far, I think it's coming out really nice. I think the next thing that I need to do, though, is to start adding some wood in for bridges and structures of that sort. For that, I've got some dark oak and some spruce. I was able to get this farmed up in our new little farming area down in the basement. That really helps out down there. These are the main woods I think I'm going to want to use, but if I think of anything else, I might go grab some. Let me try to map out where I want these bridges. This is my rough concept for the bridge on this side. I think that'll be really good. I like that it connects to this area over here. I was thinking of having it connect straight in, but I realized that the problem will be that I'll probably trample these when I'm jumping, so that doesn't sound ideal. So I think just a simple bridge that kind of follows along here would be good. I'll need to do some like structural supports and stuff like that on this one since it's so high. And then on the other side, we've got this little tiny bridge, and of course these aren't done. I still need to texture them and figure out what I want to do for all of that, what kind of structural support they need. This is kind of the concept of this so that we can walk up here and head straight in without having to jump through the water every single time, because that can get quite annoying. I'm quite pleased with that so far, but it definitely needs some work, so let me get some extra materials and start chugging away on what that might look like. Both of the rickety bridges are in now. I added quite a bit of texture to make it look very hodgepodge. And over here, this one is up 2. This one is just as hodgepodge. I'm pretty happy with both of those. I think they add a lot. I've also added quite a bit of little tiny wood structures to some of the little POIs that I made. I think that kind of really helps tie in some of this. And I've also added like bits of like ruined floor that have come up as well on some of them. I think it kind of brings everything more cohesive together, and I'm happy with that. Next thing I need to do is actually plant these farms and get them all set up. I've added in our farms. Over here we have a tiny melon and pumpkin patch. And over here we have an even tinier cactus farm. I think both of these farms are sufficient for our needs. The other thing that I started working on was the ground layer here. I started turning everything down here into mud. I eventually want this lake to be all mud. I think it makes sense for it to be mud since it's touching the water. I don't think dirt makes a lot of sense. Some sand would make sense, but not necessarily in a lake. And the way that I have accomplished this is with 2 different methods. First is the bottle method, where you get an empty bottle and you go around and you rapidly click while you're in the water, and you do that over the dirt here and it will transform it into mud. The other way that I did it was I went all the way that way past our savanna and into the mangrove forest that we have there, or the mangrove swamp, I should say, and I gathered a entire inventory full of mud. I brought that back and then replaced everything that couldn't be turned into mud. So all of the gravel, all of the sand, all of the clay, etc. While I was working on that, I realized something kind of important about our build, and I think it'll be easier for me to show you from a different angle. So let me find somewhere to stand. I think this is a pretty good angle to show you guys what I'm going to talk about. I realized while I was finishing up this area, thinking that I was almost done, that there's a couple of really big problems with what I've built here that I probably need to adjust for this to look a little bit better. The first problem is that all of these structures are pretty much the same height. There's only some slight differences in heights throughout all of these, which makes it look really flat overall. I think I need to add more height variation in these areas so that it looks better. The other thing that I noticed is that every single one of these pieces of ruin has the exact same color palette, and they kind of blend in together. For example, right here is a structure, and it blends in so much that it looks like it's part of this structure. I think I need to go through and add some more variance to some of these blocks so that each of these structures looks unique and more different from each other. So first things first, I want to get started on fixing the amount of colors and contrast going in this area. If we look at this, there's about 3 blocks going on, which means there's not a lot of contrast. And I have kind of come up with some more blocks that will help with that. Let's look at those. This is our current palette, which is very limited. There's not much going on, and they're all very similar in color. This is the only major difference. I'm thinking of moving more to this type of a gradient. So we've got tuff, cobblestone, stone bricks, stone, andesite, smooth stone, and diorite. I'm thinking this will add a lot more contrast to these structures rather than just these simple 3 blocks. I'm going to get started by working on some of the smaller structures to see what I can do with those, and then I'll move on to the bigger structures. Just for a proof of concept, here is the first one that I've worked on. I bulked this up a little bit and I gave it a lot more shape, and I made it a bit taller so that it kind of stands out. There's darker blocks towards the bottom, and then it gets brighter as it goes up. I think that kind of makes sense, especially because these mossy blocks look a lot darker and kind of look more like the tuft. So I think this is more the direction that I'm trying to go in for these structures. And I'm going to need to apply this type of scheme to the rest of these, because this one looks really boring in comparison if we look at it now. This one has a lot more interest, and this one just kind of seems like it's there. So let's start working on some of these other ones, and we'll save these big areas for last, because I think I'm going to try to do 1 or 2 things to these that's quite a bit different, and I need to get a little bit of practice in before I do that. This little one is looking a lot better now. This one I did not raise the height of because I don't want to raise all of the heights. I want some of them to be smaller and some of them to be bigger. So this one's going to remain still short like it was before. This one here stayed about the same as this one height-wise, but I did add quite a bit of change to the texture of it so that it wasn't so flat. It was originally just, 2 pillars and then a short pillar. So I added a lot more texture to it on the outside so that it looks more interesting to look at. I think that really helps. We've got this little structure here done, as well as this one too. I think those are looking a lot better. But now we need to tackle these big ones, and I think this is where hopefully more of the variety is going to come in so that they kind of distinguish themselves from each other a little bit more. These ones, they're fairly darker at the bottom, and then they get brighter around here. These ones, I think I'm going to have be kind of medium colors and then get a lot brighter near the top so that they stand out a lot more. And that's kind of why I got the diorite and the smooth stone. I'm hoping to use quite a bit more of these and maybe even the andesite in this so that these look a little bit brighter. I've gone ahead and temporarily removed the cactus from here just so I don't fall into it and constantly take tick damage. But I think we're going to start with this one because I don't want this structure to get too much higher than it already is. I just want to kind of change out a little bit of the gradient to make it brighter near the top. So I think this one will be a good test to see if I like what I'm doing. This little farm area is looking much better. It's looking a lot brighter near the top, and it's got a lot more detail to it. I also made a larger hole in the side of the structure because it was looking a little bit too uniform. I think this one is exactly where I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and replant the cactus and then move over there to the pumpkin and melon farm so that I can start working on that one. I think that maybe the biggest change will end up coming to this central one. We'll have to see. I might do something big to the pumpkin and melon one as well. I figured maybe for the process of this one, I could bring you guys kind of more along with me, and I could show you exactly what I'm up to. So the first thing that I'm doing with these is that I'm going around and I'm kind of darkening the bottom edge where I feel like it needs it. This is only 1 block deep, so I think it can stay kind of lighter, but down here where it starts to get deeper, I want those blocks to look darker. So I'm kind of swapping those out. So already down here, it's starting to look a little bit better with the tuff and the cobble. It looks a little bit darker down there than it did. And then I can see here that these are a light colored stone, and I want those to be probably either tuff or cobble as well. Maybe even the mossy, since it's kind of mossy here. I think that's a good idea. And I continue that around for all of these other little areas. I find areas where it looks like it could just be a little bit darker and I add something. So the next step is to come up here and decide where some of the block choices that I've made maybe don't necessarily make sense. There's a lot of ones where it's lighter on the bottom and then darker on the top. I consider this block to be a bit darker than this one, so that doesn't really make sense if we're going with more of a gradient. So I think there's places like this where I need to kind of flip things around. Additionally, I want this outer edge here to start to get lighter as it goes up towards this section. I think this section needs to be brighter, and then it can be this kind of more neutral middle color on the sides here. This is the basic kind of outline that I've decided to do for this one. So I've raised up quite a bit here and quite a bit here, as well as a little bit of a pillar here. But I can't just leave it like this. I need to add, a little bit more damage and weathering and variety going on so that it looks a little bit more evened out. I'm going to probably use slabs and stairs and things like that to accomplish that. There we go. I think the wall texturing looks a lot better now and it's got a lot more depth. I still need to add the holes, the little damages in the wall, and I also want to add some more detailing on the inside, things like little platforms and stuff like that, just so it's not just a wall going up and down. That's definitely more what I wanted for this. I think this one is probably done, and it's time for me to move on to the big one. That might take a little bit of extra time, so I will probably check back in with you once I have that one the way that I want, because I am not exactly sure how to do it quite yet. So I love that at the very start of this episode, I said I was going to want to do something that was a little more simple so that I could relax and calm down this episode because this week has been hectic. And then I chose to basically re update all of the ruins after completing them. I kind of played myself a fool this week, but that's okay. This is definitely taking me a lot longer than I thought it was going to take me, but that's okay. It's coming out pretty cool, I think. This is my first time building something like this, so it still feels a little rough around the edges, I'm not going to lie. And I'm not exactly sure where to go from here. I think that's something that I'm going to need to learn in the future. But for now, I'm quite happy with what I have built. I still have a few more things that I need to get done around this place. A little bit of extra decorating in the water. And now that I've built up some of these structures like this, I want to add more details to the outside of the structures because they're looking quite bland. I can show you what that looks like. Here's an example of how the outside of the structures are looking. I have a little bit of wood supports on some of them from building it earlier in this episode, but I think I could add more wooden supports and extra things on the outside. The other thing that I'm thinking I need to do is maybe add a little bit more in here, maybe a couple of little stone piles and stuff, just so that it's not completely plain. It would make sense that some of the stuff that has crumbled has fallen in the water and is kind of scattered around. So I think I'm going to add that as well. I can see the trader right there. What a guy. Um, but yeah, I think I'm basically just in the detailing phase of this area and trying to get it complete now. So let me see if I can do that. So I'm pretty close to done now, and I would like to try out something that my partner suggested to me. He was suggesting that if I plant some of these underground, there might be fireflies, so it might look like there's bugs near the water. And yeah, they're starting to spawn even during the day, so I think that's a good idea. I think I might want to add a few firefly bushes around the edge of the water. That way, whenever I'm walking by, I get a few firefly particles and it kind of looks like there's little bugs or gnats flying around the water. After a lot of hard work, I think the ruins are finally where I want them. I've added quite a lot to the outside edges of this, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a walk around so you guys can kind of see more of it, not just the insides where the farms are. I added a little, like the remnant of a stained glass window. It was very experimental, so I'm not sure how good it is, but hopefully it gets the idea across. And then, of course, as we continue, we can go all the way over here to this farm. So I've added a lot of tiny little details around the edges, including this creeping moss, I think it's called. And I've added little walkways where you can kind of walk around the edges as well. I thought that was kind of interesting. You can get kind of a higher vantage point over the farms and over some of the ruins. And each of them have just a little bit added around. I thought that it added more depth to them and more details. It kind of looks more like we're coming in and trying to do maybe some repairs or something along the lines of that. As mentioned, I did add little tiny rock clusters down here as well. And of course, some drip leaves and some lily pads. We got this tiny little area where we can look back at our base from and see everything we've worked on over there. I think that's pretty cool. I ended up clearing off this area here. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but it makes the view from that side looking through the window look better. And from way over here, we can see what the ruins looks like. I think I accomplished at least one of my goals and partially the other. So one of my goals was to differentiate the height of some of these locations. I definitely feel like I did that. But I do still feel like some of these areas blend together. And at this point, I don't think there's a lot that I can do unless I redo whole sections. For the future, I will know, if I'm going to be doing something like this, to have maybe two different palettes to work from instead of just one, so that there's a lot more variety. I think maybe I could have done these in a lot darker of a palette scheme so that they were completely different from the ruins themselves. So definitely something for me to consider in the future. Overall, though, I think I'm pretty happy with the way that this came out. It definitely adds a lot to our base, and so far I'm kind of feeling like it's one of the bigger things that I've built in this world, and that's pretty cool to me. Before we end off the episode, I would like to mark off some of the projects that we have been doing. We made this book last time, and I forgot to go through it. So let's see, what did we finish? We've finished the pumpkins and the melons. And last time we finished the wheat field, and we also finished the cactus. The other thing I did in between episodes was get the bamboo farm in. I don't think I had a tree farm listed in here, so nothing to remove there, but that's looking a lot better. We're making some good progress on this, I think. The last thing I'd like to do is show you guys kind of what it looks like at night or in the evening. I did add the fireflies underneath, so they do pop up more frequently. I might add even more firefly bushes up on the surface so we get even more particles. But I think this is looking pretty cool. It's pretty well lit and everything like that. I'm quite happy with the way that it looks at nighttime. I added some glow lichen to kind of cover up the smooth stone so that it wasn't so stark. And I think that also adds just a little bit of illumination. I think it's looking pretty good. And with that, I'm going to call this an episode. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you joining me on my journey. Bye!